Hello, Tab family, guests, and friends. We are on the verge of the time set aside to celebrate Christmas. It's Christmas Eve. And I tell you, this time of year is so special, not only because of being able to spend time with family and friends, not only because of the gifts and the food and the fellowship, but it's because our Savior, the time we've set aside to celebrate our Savior being born. Let me tell you why I believe that is so beautiful and so critical. We've been singing songs, and you've heard great songs, and you've had a chance to fellowship in that way. Here's what I would say to you. In Luke chapter 2, there was a man by the name of Simeon who was waiting for the birth of Jesus. In fact, he prayed to the end of hoping to stay alive long enough to see his Savior born. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, that is like, wow. The fact that he so anticipated the coming of Christ, the coming of his Savior, the coming of the King who had been promised for ages, that he wanted to be alive to witness it for himself, and he prayed to that end. And so this Christmas Eve, I want to prompt you and cue you, as well as prompt and cue me in a few ways. First off, and you'll see it come across the screen, what are you anticipating in this Christmas season? Specifically, what are you anticipating God to do? Or what do you desire to do for the kingdom? I think that it is paramount that we as believers have an anticipation, not only about what we believe God is going to do, but also about what we desire and sense God calling us to do. And so his example is so challenging, but yet comforting. Challenging in the sense like, man, do I really anticipate Christ coming back? Do I look forward in this season to his birth with that much intensity and intentionality? Do I just kind of float into the season and take it as is? Those are things that come to mind. And so I'm grateful for his example in the Bible. The other thing he teaches us is not only about anticipation, but affirmation. He was waiting so that it could be affirmed. Once he saw Christ, he knew not only had God answered the promise, but it affirmed and strengthened his faith even more, knowing that God did exactly what he would do. Now, some may say, well, Pastor, it sounds like you're saying there may have been some doubt on his part. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is he waited patiently, faithfully, prayerfully, and it's affirming to see what you prayed for come to fruition. That's part of our humanity, being able to actually see it. We celebrate it, we walk by faith, not by sight, but then we get to celebrate as well when it actually shows up. And so I ask you this, does the birth of Christ, the thought of him on this sweet Christmas Eve, affirm for you that our faith is real? I know sometimes we're looking for faith miracles and wonders, and rest assured, God is more than capable of performing miracles and does every day. God makes us and leaves us in awe quite often, wondering like, how did God do that? And there are some things though that are more concrete in the sense that tangibly he has already given us to affirm our faith, and the birth of Christ to me is number one on that list. So is Christ's birth and on this eve of Christmas enough for you? Does it magnify and amplify your faith? Or is it something that, if you're honest with yourself, you just become kind of commonplace with it? Like, yeah, I know it's Christmas and we're celebrating the birth of Christ, and okay. I hope that I can stir up in you this newfound passion for this season for that very reason. The fact that Jesus left heaven, came to earth, and was born of a woman, born under the law, that he might redeem us from the law so that we could become sons, meaning leading us to heirs. He took us from slavery to sonship, all by coming on one winter night. So yes, while we have the nativity scenes and all these other things that are great, that night was not this perfect setup because of the moon, stars, and how we paint the picture. When you look at the conditions in which he was born, it was dirty, it was nasty. What they needed, they did not have. They were outdoors, giving birth, Mary, to a child, but not just an ordinary child, the Savior of the world, the one whom one day she would hold, but then he would hold her. The one whom she wiped away his tears when he was born, but one day he would wipe away her tears. The one who she held close and protected and kept safe. And one day, by hanging on a cross, he then protects and keeps her safe from spending eternity separated from him and having a pathway to spend eternity with him in heaven. So that, my friends, is what should stir us up and be affirmed. Here's the last thing I would say about his story. The idea that he would verbally share, he was active in his faith, that he would actively share that this is what he's seeking God for. Again, should be another point of not only intentionality for us to ask ourselves, are we active in our faith? And that doesn't mean beating people down with Bibles or trying to coerce them into coming to church. It means when God places something on our heart, when God stirs up something in us, are we openly, actively seeking it, praying for it, and living as if God is going to grant it because we know it's God's will? In fact, do we seek his will? I believe he sought his will because of what he was asking for had been promised in the scriptures. So what that tells me, he was active in the Torah, because that's what they had at that time. He was active in the scriptures. He was active in the pieces of the Old Testament that existed to know what the promises of God are, not were, are, because his promises are everlasting and ongoing and present. So here's the last thing. Are you active in your faith? Now, I don't say these things this Christmas Eve to bring you down. I come to lift you up. I come to hopefully help you celebrate in a different kind of way this Christmas Eve, and that it will spur and stir up something in you leading into 2022 that says, I want to do some things different because I want to be, make sure that I'm active in my faith, that I allow Jesus being born to affirm my faith, and that I will diligently seek him because of him being who he is. So that's all I have. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas Eve. And I look forward to seeing you when we get together again and worship.